Hello, Lions. This is Mrs. Lambert, your librarian. This is your video helper for sources for your U.S. History project. So you are going to click on this U.S. History Museum project, and this video as well as part 2 are going to be embedded right down here. They'll also be linked here. These videos will also be in the Mac and Via group that I put together. So if you click on that, click here. It's going to take you into Mac and Via. Mac and Via, you're going to log in with your 6-digit student ID and your 8-digit birthday and choose Reedy as the school. So I'm going to talk about the types of sources. I'm going to talk about source types for you, and I'm going to kind of break this down for you a little bit. So in your Mac and Via group are these databases. So we've got a couple of ABC Clio databases, a Britannica school, and then some Gale ones. We also have an encyclopedia. So I'm going to explain to you what types of sources you can get from these databases, and then in the second video I'll show you how to access these databases for those different types of sources. Okay? So let's talk about sources first. Imagine, if you will, there's a building the size of, let's say Stonebriar Mall. And in this building are all the copies of newspapers, magazines, reference and nonfiction ebooks, academic journals, encyclopedias. Imagine if all of those resources, those print resources, were taken and put into these digital databases for you to access. So the resources in these databases are not necessarily digital resources. Some of them are, some of them exist solely in the digital world, but we really don't distinguish a difference anymore between print and digital resources because most print resources are being converted to digital for the purposes of these of databases. Okay, so when you're looking at sources, you don't want to think of them in terms of print versus digital. You want to think of them as what type of source they are. So there are 5 basic types of sources that you're going to encounter in our databases, okay? And so those basic types of sources are magazines, reference and nonfiction ebooks, academic journals, newspapers, and online encyclopedias. Online encyclopedias exist in 2 places. We have actual online encyclopedias, Britannica School and World Book in our databases, and then you will notice that there will be various encyclopedia articles as well in some of the databases. So just know that those exist in those 2 places, and then most of your sources can be defined as either magazine, a book, an academic or scholarly journal, and a news source or a newspaper. Okay? Alright, so these are all, this document is here in your Mac and Via for you, and the reason it's here is because I tell you, here's some of the databases you can find magazines in. Here's some of the databases you can find books in. Here's some of the databases you can find academic journals in. Here's some of the databases you can find newspapers in. And then I tell you on the online encyclopedias are Britannica, World Book, and then there are encyclopedia articles in some of the other databases. So this is here for your reference. I also want to talk briefly about scholarly and academic. So magazines, there are basically 3 types of magazines. There's popular magazines, trade magazines, and scholarly or academic journals. Okay? So popular magazines are going to be things like Newsweek, Time, Vogue, Sports Illustrated, that sort of thing. Trade journals are used by specific industries or trade groups, and so they usually report specifically about an industry. And then you have scholarly or academic journals, and scholarly or academic journals are scholarly in nature in that they are the articles are contributed by professionals or scientists in those fields. Okay, and so scholarly or academic journals have to go through an approval process involving an editorial board before they can even be published. Most scholarly or academic journals don't have a lot of ads, if any, because people like myself in a profession, they subscribe to those journals, and that's what covers the cost of the printing of the journals, but they are almost entirely nonprofit in that they exist to aid people in a certain profession. So scholarly or academic journals are going to be your very best type of source. So when we're looking at these databases, we're looking at different types of sources, okay? And we're looking at locating those sources in the database. So for instance, some of these databases contain different types of sources. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. If you are using websites outside of Mac and VIA as sources, just know that everything that's in here is these are all things that we pay for. So most of the things in these databases you're not going to be able to find on the open web because you have to pay for this information because it comes from, like I said, remember that Stonebriar Mall with all the magazines and newspapers and stuff? Those are not going to be available on the internet, and even if you go to like New York Times or CNN, some of their content is restricted to people with access to their subscription services. Okay, but you do have access to almost all of anything that you might want from the web through our databases. Okay. So for instance, let's click on Britannica School. This is an online encyclopedia. The only thing that's in here is encyclopedia articles, okay? So for instance, if I come in here and I type Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to get articles related to Thomas Jefferson. So here's an article about the person. Here's an article about Thomas Jefferson University. Okay, here's an article about the Jefferson Memorial. Okay, so you'll notice that there's all different types of articles. So in here, these are just encyclopedia articles. That's all that's in here, right? So there's just encyclopedia articles in Britannica School. But it's a great place to get a little bit of information about a topic or learn about your topic. The second source I'm going to show you is Student Resources and Context. So this particular source is going to be great for looking at different types of sources. So imagine, if you will, like for instance in the Reedy library, you can check out all different types of items from the library, right? You can check out nonfiction books, biographies, graphic novels, fiction books. You can check out a USB drive. You can check out a laptop or a Chromebook or scissors, okay? These are all the different types of items in the library. Think of each of these databases as a library, and then inside of it are lots of different items that you can check out. So when I look up Thomas Jefferson, here's all the different types of items that are in this database about Thomas Jefferson. Okay, they have 51 reference articles, 17 biographies, 19 images, 13 primary sources, items that existed at the time of the historical event that are considered a source from that time. Audio, video, news, magazines, academic journals, critical essays, websites. Okay, so all of these are the different types of items that you can access from this database. So the database itself is not a source. Each one of these have different sources in it. So for instance, let's click on reference and I'll show you what I mean. So within this database, this is a source. Presidential Administration Profiles for Students. That is a source. The American Revolution. That is a source. The UXL Encyclopedia of U.S. History. That is a source. So you could get 3 to 4 sources from this database. However, I would suggest that you vary the types of sources so that you get maybe one reference article, one magazine article, one academic journal article, one primary source. But you could get all of your sources from this database because you're getting different types of sources over here. Okay, so that's what I want you to understand about the databases, is they have different types of sources within them, and it's virtually impossible anymore to truly distinguish if it was originally a print source or if it was originally a digital source. We don't really look at that anymore. So just know that you can use the different things. So for instance, magazines. Let's look at this. the different types of sources here. The New American, that is a source. The National Review, that is a source. The Smithsonian Magazine, that is a source. Okay. Over here you can see the publication titles that this database is pulling Thomas Jefferson articles from. And so you can certainly, you know, if there's a specific, like if you're wanting an article from the New Yorker, okay, you could click that. All right, so just note that this database itself is not a source. The items within it are the different sources. And all of these databases are going to work the same way except for ABC Clio. ABC Clio, the only source is ABC Clio. So if you pull two sources from ABC Clio, then technically, or two items, then you are technically using the same source for those two items. But ABC Clio does have great information, especially when it comes to American government and American history in these two databases. Okay? All right. Make sure you check out part 2 because I'm going to show you how to use the different databases.